I've also done some consultancy. Thank you. In translations. Thank you.
In what translations?
French.
What language? From what language to what language?
Such a,
Is that you've done some translations?
no, a consultancy in translation from French to English, English to French. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chair. May I take the Honorable Cecilia Dapaah to your CV, page 3. Minister of State 2007 to 2009, no date provided. We don't know the sunset, what happened in 2009, in which month. Special Assistant to the President of the Republic of Ghana, I should presume is President Kufuor, 2001-2005. We don't know when you started. We don't know when the sunset was on that particular portfolio. Member of Parliament for Baltimore constituency, 2009 to 2013. No indication of date. Same for Minister for Aviation and Minister for Sanitation and Water Resources. You probably may have to indulge, Chair, to correct those aspects of your CV for the record, but just refer to it and see whether I'm correct or not. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe the Member of Parliament, for instance, for Baltimore constituency is from 2005 to 2009. It is there. Some of the data are given and continued under the titles. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Honorable Secretary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, on April 24th, 2017, His Excellency the President of the Republic promised to make Accra the cleanest city in Africa. Almost 4 years into this promise, Honorable Nominee, can we say, or can you say, that Accra today is the cleanest city in Africa?
Mr. Chairman, Accra is on course to become the cleanest city that the President gave in absolute terms. I think we are on course, looking at what we started doing and what I continue from my colleague. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, can the nominee tell us some of the activities that her ministry has undertaken, which is why she is saying they are on course to make Accra the cleanest city in Africa?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe we all know that cleanliness is an all-inclusive process. It entails a lot of work, and we know that when you start a process, it takes time to yield results. There are low-hanging fruits, like the initiative we took to provide bins for littering to stop, so that people can put their litter in. That is one. And most important of all, we've also, through the Gamma project, provided 33,000 household toilets. That is also part of the cleaning or cleanliness process that we have undertaken. We also have another project, the Garrett project, that is coming on to make sure the dam sites are covered, and then most importantly, the Odor River is also worked on. We also have the gas slip project that is also taking care of the vulnerable areas and the unplanned settlements, to give them, again, about 5,000 places of convenience, and also to help in the removal of their waste. So apart from the franchises given by the MMDs to local contractors to work in, I believe we see a marked change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, in 2016, the total urban and rural water coverage were 76-75% respectively. Can the nominee tell us the total water coverage as at the end of 2020 with respect to urban and then rural water?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the year up to the year 2019, we have moved for rural water from 62.29 to 62.52. And we are expecting the figures, we are yet to collate the figures, the results for 2020. We are moving from we've added 2.7% more for rural coverage. For urban coverage, we've added 10.7%, and we are still waiting for the results for the 2020. Mr. Chairman, one thing is that as the projects are coming on board, population is increasing. So we have come up with a new policy to take care of population growth that we give to some of these projects. Because, for instance, the Tamale project, for instance, is geared to the year 2040 to take care of the population growth. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, just follow up there. When you say Tamale project, are you talking about a Tamale water expansion project or a Tamale sanitation project? And related to what the Honorable Samson Ahi asked, establishment of National Sanitation Authority and your plan to establish a National Sanitation Fund. What is the status of that? But clarify Tamale for me first, and I know what project you are undertaking there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm talking about the new Tamale water project. That is going to increase water supply from 45,000 cubic meters to 135,000 cubic meters. And on the Sanitation Authority, we are proposing, we are yet to finalize work on it, we are proposing that there should be a sanitation fund, either supplied by GOG or through a sanitation levy, so that we will be well equipped financially to take care of the gap in the financing of sanitation in this country. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, still a follow-up. Has the Tamale water project commenced to the best of your knowledge? I see them carrying, they used to call them the 4 yellow cans, forgive my language. I see it all around. I was in Tamale yesterday before coming, and has work commenced on the Tamale water expansion project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, you might be right, Honorable Chair, that people will carry these yellow cans. It is because in the dry season, the intake at Gallon gets dry, so people unfortunately have to go around and look for water. But to answer the second part of the question, Mr. Chairman, yes, the contractors have been on the site, or they've gone to the site to do the geological surveys and the seismic studies. So I think the development phase is going on. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
You have asked for 3 questions already.
No. The second one was follow-up.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, in 2016, the NDC government under President Mahama, through BOT, commissioned desalination plant at Teshiningwa. When Nanado's government assumed office, the plant was shut down. I can go on.
So, kindly speak into the mic.
I haven't finished. Now, Mr. Chairman, what I'm saying is that in 2016, under the previous government, through BOT, we commissioned the desalination plant at Teshi. When the NDP government assumed office, it was shut down at a point. Recently, when there was a lockdown as a result of COVID-19, we read in the news that they asked the operators to open the facility. I just want to find out from Honorable Minister the status of the desalination plant as we speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Indeed, it is true. The desalination plant was commissioned in 2016 and is supposed to produce 60,000 cubic meters of water. But currently, it's producing 50,000 cubic meters of water and is being pushed into the system. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Honorable. Yes, Honorable Ejiso.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to the Honorable nominee. In January 2020, the Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources set up an inter-ministerial task force on environmental sanitation with composition of 17 members drawn from ministries, departments, and agencies and the private sector to enhance multi-sectoral collaboration on sanitation. Kindly share with us what the task force has been able to do to improve our sanitation conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is true indeed. The Sanitation and Water Resources Ministry straddles a lot of sectors. So we deemed it necessary to bring in all stake players, active stakeholders, I should say. And they teamed up to share ideas, to advise the ministry, and also to make sure that contractors as well as key players are on top of their game. And I think this all-inclusive nature of the group helped us a lot. We included even the donor partners, and we invited the parliamentary committee to make a representation. I think they were too busy to come in, but we briefed the chairman of our committee on this. They have helped us bring all the synergies together to make sure that we know exactly what we are doing at any given time. For instance, this cleansing and cleaning of our capitals, we made sure we involved everybody to make sure during the lockdown, for instance, to work to achieve an optimum state of cleanliness in our capitals. We didn't only do it in Accra, we did it in all the regional capitals. Again, the Sanitation Authority document is being studied and ready to be spruced up for presentation to Cabinet. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
In an attempt to fight open defecation in the country, we saw the Ministry of Sanitation started a PPP arrangement with some private companies in Ghana. One of the key projects was the Ghana First. Please, what is the relationship between the Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources and the Ghana First project, which unfortunately is hung in the air at the moment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ghana First is a private company that undertakes the building of community toilets. It's a laudable idea, and we would give it all the support. But, Mr. Chairman, it's interesting to note that when we tried to pry into what they were doing and what the MNDAs were also doing to help, we were warned that we should keep away. It's their private work, etc., etc. I have publications to prove that. So we are monitoring them from afar. But I'll encourage them to go on and work through the systems they've put in place to finish the job. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Honorable Minister, this is a very sensitive and a sore issue. For many communities, Ghana First collaborated with MMBCEs to select and launch the program. For the communities, there's a government coming to do a project for us, and the government is being held responsible or blamed for the non-completion of the projects. Indeed, is there anything your ministry can do to facilitate and ensure that the projects are completed expeditiously?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, as I said, we will give it all the support that it needs, but it has a special arrangement with the MMDs, and the committee has prepared a report to present to the President, so we will look at that. From there, we will take it up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Honorable Nilante.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Madam, throughout your presentation, you talked about sanitation, you talked about water. Technically, and within the international accepted scope, what is sanitation?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In essence, sanitation is simply cleanliness and hygiene. And I always say that I prefer the French word for sanitation, which is assainissement. It encapsulates the whole concept of sanitation. When we say sanitation, it's, for instance, it starts with the individual, personal hygiene, how you treat your waste at home, how you treat your fecal matter at home, how you treat your wastewater at home. Then we transport that into the communities. That's where the MMDAs come in. And then the long term is the national interventions that are needed. So sanitation, in simple terms, Honorable Chair, is cleanliness, personal hygiene. And then I also will add that sanitation is what gives us dignity as a people. That is why it's so important to talk about sanitation transparently and without colors. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So you agree that, principally speaking, if you are looking at your ministry, it's taking of water resources, sanitation, and also waste management. Is that what technically that's what it looks like?
Mr. Chairman, please come again, Honorable.
I'm saying, so principally speaking, if I should break down your ministry into the various sectors, we are talking about water resources, we are talking about sanitation, and we are talking about waste management.
Mr. Chairman, waste management is embedded in sanitation. Solid waste management and liquid waste management, they are embedded in sanitation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
How many districts in the country have no cesspit MTS?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have the figure. I can find out and come back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
But are you aware that there are some districts that do not have cesspit MTS?
It is very, very possible.
So what are you going to do to ensure that these districts get septic NTS?
Mr. Chairman, I can, for now, say that the sanitation authority will address the fecal management matter in there.
Mr. Chairman, another disturbing issue that I want my minister to look at, going around the country, I can say on authority that 50% of MMDAs don't have anything they can call engineered liquid waste sites. What are we going to do to make sure that these assemblies stop dumping liquid waste anywhere within the community and in people's farms?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe the question is two parts. Liquid waste being disposed of indiscriminately, and then I'll add solid waste as well, being also indiscriminately. That has been addressed. We've engaged the MMDAs to make sure that at least they dig cells to put in their waste. And we are lucky, and we've done our analysis to know that in the rural areas, 85%, almost 85% of the waste is organic. And that can be put in these cells to mature and disintegrate, and they can form compost. When they take out those that cannot be recycled naturally, I should say. With regard to the fecal matter or liquid waste, the answer is what we are trying to do to address the open defecation issue. Hence, the building of 125,000 household toilets across the length and breadth of this nation. And we have 5,498 communities that have been declared open defecation free. We have the whole list available. So, Honorable, your observation shows concern and is being addressed. I will be very happy if we can build about 1 million household toilets. And we have various types of toilets for various settlements. And this is what we've carried out to do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Will you agree with me that when it comes to the urban centers, the metropolitan areas, I was on sanitation, it was a follow-up.
You know,
you agree with me, it was one question.
Take your last one.
Yeah, so will you agree with me that when it comes to the urban centers, the metropolitan areas, household toilets, and by nature, do not solve the problem of open defecation? What are we going to do concretely to minimize the instances of open defecation along the beaches, in big drains, under bridges, and even in alleys, especially in places like Accra, Kumasi, Tamale, and other places?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I missed the first part. I got the second part, but could you repeat again there?
Saying that household toilets themselves by nature do not resolve our problem of open defecation in the urban centers. As you yourself said in the beginning, because of population growth. So you put in a toilet in this household. The next 10 months or 1 year, that toilet cannot even take care of the people in the house. So what are we going to do really if you're looking at places like Accra, Kumasi, Tamale, and other places, where constantly, in spite of all interventions in household toilets, constantly we're having open defecation in drains, under bridges, and at the beaches, especially the beaches, which is supposed to be our tourism potential.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe, for me, if I may give my personal view, provision of household toilets is key. I will also encourage, I wasn't much of a fan of community toilets, but again, because of the, I should say the settlements, type of settlements that we have, we need community toilets, more of them, to make sure we provide these within the MMDAs to make sure people have access to these places. Because once we are human beings, necessarily we will have to attend to nature's call. And how it is done and where it is put is very, very important. So I will go that way. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I've finished, but I just want to make comments on what you said, so that you advise that it becomes part of the new sanitation policy, because the new policy looks at
if we approve her, you had access to her under committee or to her office. That's right. Yes, Reverend.
I'm grateful, Honorable Chair. Congratulations, Honorable Minister nominee. Honorable Minister, what is the state of Ghana's water security? The state of Ghana's water security.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe, apart from this perennial problem of illegal mining that introduces contaminants and pollutants into our water, I'll say we would have been quite safe if we had desisted from that when the president made the clarion call. And I'll use this August House medium to appeal to all of us who do that to stop it. Ghana is well endowed with surface water. We have 53.2 billion cubic meters of water, and we are using only 14%. Out of the 14, we have 68% for irrigation, 10% for domestic use, and 10% for industrial use. The rest is scattered amongst other uses. So I believe we have a charge. The Methodist hymn book says, a charge to keep I have, and a God to glorify. God has given us this natural commodity, or very essential commodity. It's our duty to take care of it. We are secure, but we need to preserve it for the next generations. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chairman, just a little follow-up, Honorable. So God is kind enough to give you your Methodist hymn phrase, this essential resource. Yet, God's creation are suffering for lack of water and lack of access to quality water. What will you do to make this essential product increasingly available to the Ghanaian?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Per our manifesto promise, we said we'll provide water for all. So, as the Minister in charge of water, I have the map of Ghana in my office, and it's the policy. And my former two deputies are here. They will testify or attest to that. It is the policy of government to make sure that every region, including the new ones, they all have water projects. Number two, it's our policy also to make sure that we serve all rural villages, urban, peri-urban areas en route to make sure the water gets to the people. And Mr. Chairman, I believe I'll end here. When there's the opportunity, I will continue giving the list out. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, just a follow-up on the question I earlier posed. Pursuant to Sustainable Development Goal 6, which is to do with clean water and sanitation, and having outlined the broader policy that your ministry has been pursuing, between 2017 and 2020, particularly within your tenure as Minister for Water Resources and Sanitation, what would you describe or outline as some of the major water interventions that you rolled out?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've done a lot of interventions. We all know the importance of SDG 6 to provide water and sanitation to the good people of Ghana. We all know that water is the central pillar for most of these SDGs. For instance, poverty reduction is one, food security is one, health is one, ecosystems one, etc. We have 7 SDGs that I'll say directly depend on water. And I'll make a quotation from our revered Chief Imam, who happens to be the chief patron of the water and sanitation sector. We entreated him and he kindly assented to being the chief patron. And I can quote him that he says that man was created in water. Man was created in water. So water is the most essential, maybe second to air, the air that we breathe. So we made it a point to make sure that water interventions are top priorities, and per the President's vision, to be able to provide the water that is needed for the good people of Ghana. And I must say that I have really enjoyed the, I wouldn't say collaboration, but Parliament has been kind enough to treat all the water loans which come here with alacrity, and I'm most grateful. We have the Yendi water intervention, we have the Tamale water, we have the Damango water, we have the Sunyani water, Kita water, we have the Kita Secondary Takradi water, and the Wenchi water. 8 main water projects. And then we have the rural water systems that we have also put in place. In fact, in Honorable Giselle's constituency, we just commissioned the water there, and that water had 23 systems that were put in place, and we have 145 communities that benefited. We have the 5 district water that we commissioned, we cut the sword in Abaku, and we have others too on board. And most importantly, we have the Aqua Africa water, which the sword cutting was done by my humble self, and that will take care of the Honorable Chairman's constituency as well. So Tamale is catered for huge projects, and I believe the MPs can attest to that when we finish. If they have any towns to be served, I'm glad to receive.
So we'll come to the
Thank you.
detail. We will come to the local constituency in detail. So no, for now, I'll leave it there. Are you done?
Yeah, on this note, to congratulate the Honorable Minister and to thank her for the interventions I've had, Honorable Giselle's constituency, Honorable Minority Leader's constituency, and for the interventions Asen South also enjoyed, and the remaining communities that are dependent on your magnanimity also to enjoy when given the nod. Thank you. Asen South.
Chairman, I have a follow-up to the Honorable's question. Minister, in your answer, you have stated a number of water projects. I've been perusing your handing over notes. Tamale, you have dealt with. Damongu water supply, Pong water supply expansion project, Secondary Takradi water supply, Sunyani water supply project, Upper East Region water supply project, expansion and rehabilitation of Wenchi water supply project, Kita water supply, and then Sogakope Lome transboundary water supply. You want to speak to them? What's the status of each of these initiatives? Where are we on them? What assurances do you have for the affected people living in those communities as far as access to quality water is concerned? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To start with, the Sogakope Lome water is still in its infant stages. This is water that is normally channeled back into the sea from the Volta River, and we thought it very useful. This has been on the drawing board for so long, and we are still at the feasibility studies level. With regard to the Yendi water project, the sword cutting was done, and the consultant has submitted an inception report which has been reviewed and approved by the bank. It's the Indian Exim handling the funds for that. And with Tamale Water, detailed engineering design for the project has been done, and then value for money audit is ongoing. And like I said, the geological and seismic studies are being done, just like the Damango water project. The Upper East water project is about 61% complete. That has gone very fast. We came to Parliament to seek the second part of the funding for the phase 2, and that is also ongoing. And we also have, as an intervention of water, the Gamma project water that is has also been done. We connected 282 kilometers of water lines to homes, and that has also improved the water situation in homes in Accra. We also have the Wenchi water, the commercial contract between Ghana Water Company and the contractors has been signed. Negotiation is ongoing between GOG team and the contractor. And the meeting was held yesterday. and we are awaiting the contractor's submission for tax exemption application. The Sunyani Water project is also being considered. We are awaiting the contractor's submission for the application for tax exemption. We've gotten that far, and the contractors are on site as I speak. They are on site to begin their work. And with regard to secondary Dapaah, we've just concluded the value for money, and work will start hopefully very soon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Honorable nominee, I have read a post on your ministry's website dated the 25th September 2020. And in that post, you stated that the government had extended the free water intervention policy program to December 31st, 2020, and the reasons you canvassed for, first of all, the introduction of the policy and the subsequent extension was that there was need for us to have constant access to water supply to enable us observe the COVID-19 protocols. Now, as I speak, the COVID cases, the mortality rate is very high now. We've recorded 582 deaths right now. But as at the time of the introduction of this policy, we were recording very low figures. I'd want to find out from you whether you don't think, in the face of the upsurge of COVID-19, it is prudent that we continue with that commendable policy that you initiated from September and subsequently extended it.
Mr. Chairman, I believe it's a valid and useful point, and I'll only humbly add that all the protocols need to be observed. It's not only the water for the hand washing, but wearing of masks, because I believe our lives are in our hands. And Mr. Chairman, as I speak, we have the vulnerable that use water below 50 gallons still enjoying the facility. And I think note has been taken, and His Excellency the President, having the empathy that he always has, I'm sure we'll look at this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Honorable nominee, you are also reported in the media as having stated that access to urban water stands at 93%. But, I mean, you were silent on access to rural water. I am interested in access to rural water, particularly in areas where the settlement pattern is dispersed. We have dispersed settlements, such as the Upper East region. So you have one house, it's about 2 miles from the next house, and so on and so forth. In such areas, access is very, very low, and I'm talking specifically about my own constituency and the next constituency, Busan North and South constituencies. What is happening with regards to access to rural water?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have coverage and access, and as you rightly said, it's the overall national figure for urban water, and then we have it for the rural water, which is in the 60s. You are very right. I'm very familiar with the situation, and also at times we remedy the situation by drilling boreholes, but because of the presence of some minerals and other pollutants, the water, the rain, is not fit for human consumption. So that becomes very difficult. That is why we are strictly looking at this as a very important component of the policy now, to be able to lay the pipes which will carry water from a bigger system to such places. And we might, if it's the presence of iron, Ghana has the patent to remove them. But fluoride, etc., is difficult. So we will look at each case on its own. But these are the measures we want to put in place. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can see the honourable member later, and then we'll talk about those cases. Thank you, honourable.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Hello. Honourable nominee, congratulations. And I must say, I'm one of the proudest member of parliament at the moment, due to your hard work. And this the solution to our waste, our solid waste management problem in Kumasi, in my constituency. Having this in mind, what is the long-term solution to solid waste in the major cities in Ghana, such as Accra, Kumasi, Sekondi, Dapaah, and Tamale, taking into consideration the scarcity of land? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe this is a very strong point raised by the honourable member. It is true. The long-term solution to our waste is to make sure we incinerate our waste, we recycle our waste, we do material recovery, and also do other. I always say that waste is wealth. It depends on how it is tackled. I have met those who do the sorting. They recover materials from there, and then those that are not easily recycled, we need to put them somewhere for the long-term incineration and make sure we recover as much as we can before that process. At the end of the day, that is the way to go. Honorable Chair, I had the opportunity to visit so many places last year. You enter a town and you have a heap higher than this building. And we had a policy and initiative to make sure we evacuated most of these heaps, because they became part of our skyline in our towns and villages. And I must state that we've been successful in clearing this, because most of it was compost by the time that we touched these heaps. Some had been there for 100 years, some 50 years, some 30 years, some 60 years. So we start from there as a medium measure, and then the long term will be the gasification and the incineration. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. My second question is, you've been mentioning the National Sanitation Authority, and you agree with me that it's a major institutional structure that is expected to address the poor sanitation in Ghana. How will its establishment assist the MMDAs to effectively manage their waste? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are envisaging that the authority will have districts and regional officers to work hand in glove with the MMDAs to make sure they direct them and support them, and we don't have one size fits all for every place. So they will then design the strategies to combat waste in those districts and regions. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm done, and I'm adding my voice again to congratulate the honourable nominee. Is an action woman, and I know that is going to perform in her second term. Thank you.
Yes, very good. Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, Honorable Nominee, in your response to an answer posed to you on access to water, you indicated that water coverage in urban Ghana is estimated around 93%. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, I didn't say so. The honorable member quoted an earlier submission, and that is correct.
So what is the coverage?
We have not, Mr. Chairman, we have the access figure and the coverage figure. The access figure covers all types of provisions of water. I could drill boreholes in my house to use, it's part of the access. NGOs are doing their own, it's part of the access. So we put all the access together, and that is a study done by the Statistical Survey and UNICEF. We are also compiling our list. I'll put our average to 78–80%. We are yet to get the final figures. Thank you, Mr.
So which one gave you the 93%?
Mr. Chairman, to repeat, it is the total coverage of water. Sorry, total access to water. Yes.
I'm asking this question because UNICEF and WHO in 2015 provided the same figure. I would like to read. According to UNICEF, WTO 2015, access to improved drinking water in Ghana is estimated around 89%, 93% urban coverage, and 84% rural coverage. So is it not the same figure you are telling us today, or is it different?
Mr. Chairman, I've given the source, UNICEF and Statistical Survey. We are compiling our own records also to support that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Now my second question has to do with, not your second question. Proceed, that's your third question. Mr. Chairman, you have the platform, so I will oblige.
Yes, I have the platform.
A portion of the World Bank's $570 million economic pump for Ghana was to enable Accra become the cleanest city in Africa. Specifically, $200 million was to finance the Greater Accra and Integrated Development Initiative. This initiative is a transformative urban project tailored to bolster the city to become safer, more resilient, and cleaner. What is the status of this project?
Mr. Chairman, the component for my ministry is $43 million, and I think I spoke about it earlier. That is to take care of the Odor Basin, to clean it up, and to cap the heaps of waste that that we see around the basin. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You claim that your ministry had $43 million out of the $200 million. How was that $43 million applied?
Mr. Chairman, I have given the components out is to cap about 5 heaps around Tantam and then the Odor Basin, and it's also to clean up the Odor Basin to make the channels open for water to flow in. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Honorable Western.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations to my granddaughter, who's the nominee. Mr. Chairman, well, this is not Wiggy. In a response to an earlier question on the desalination plant. You indicated that they had started producing 50,000 liters, cubic meters per day, as against 60,000. Now, what was the reason for the reduction in their production currently? And earlier on, there was some concern about the charges that they were demanding from Ghana Water, the fees that they were demanding from Ghana Water as per their contract. Have those challenges been resolved and the fees rationalized now to make it more affordable for Ghana Water?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The desalination plant is producing 50,000 cubic meters, and I'll say it's semi-normal in the sense that there are production losses that are involved, and the capacity is always different from the production figure. Vis-a-vis the issues that are at stake, there's a team working on that, so I'm sure very soon they will finish their work and bring us the report. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, just two follow-ups. There is a team working on what? Then two related to the Honorable Osler's first question on rationalizing the charges in the particular industry. Are you aware that the PURC have some tariff dedicated to desalination, and it is still part of it, and Ghana Water takes the levy as determined by the PURC? What is happening to that levy relative to the question she asked earlier? Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I meant that there is a committee, including Ghana Water, the Attorney General, PURC, and the World Bank Group, looking at the issues that have been raised. There's also the issue of boron that is also being looked at. So that is what I meant, Honorable Chairman.
Our landfill sites have been reported to be full, and there are management challenges for our landfill sites. The issues of arrears owed to environmental service providers, leachate into the ground, pollution of groundwater, the health impact of the operations of landfill site on residents around those landfill sites. What is being done by your ministry to re-engineer the landfill sites to solve these perennial problems?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe this is a very worrying issue, and we have in a major way intervened in the landfill site of Oti and Fu. Indeed, leachate is toxic, and we should not, in any way, allow it to seep into water bodies through the cracks in the soil to contaminate our groundwater sources. That is why we need to engineer our landfill sites and ultimately eliminate them through the long-term solutions that we have proffered. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
What's your relationship with the Environmental Service Providers Association? And we did ask the Minister for Environment Designate when he appeared before the committee to whether he would work to promote source separation of waste, to promote recycling of some of these waste products that we produce. Would you work with them, the service providers, local government, and MESTI, to look into this area, either by litigation or public education, legislation or public education?
Mr. Chairman, I believe we have already started with this sorting. We have pilot projects going on, but in our homes, we are all guilty. We use one bin to put in our daily waste after the chores in our homes. So it's the way to go finally, because it's become very, very important, because the compost plants, their experiences are such that ultimately we'll need to get this going, and it's part of the policy of the Sanitation Authority to look at this, because we need to do sorting, especially in our institutions, in our schools. We started at the medical school, and it's going well. We started in some schools as well. So in our homes, very soon we'll have to have about 3 bins, one for plastics and bottles, and one for paper, and then one for the organic waste, the leftovers from our fufu and banku and akle and tosafi and all those pieces of leftovers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, blah, blah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I've been longing for an opportunity to congratulate the honorable nominee for the public chastising and very bold leadership that she exhibited when she was aviation minister, when British Airways was maltreating Ghanaian travelers, when there were bed bugs in their flights and all kinds of poor customer service. She stood up for Ghanaians, and she stood up for our travelers, and I have enormous pride, and I'm very, very pleased to put this on record that she's one of the bold, dynamic leaders this country needs. So I want to congratulate her highly for that action. Mr. Chairman, my first question will be from the Presidential Transition Team report on infrastructure dated December 29, 2020, at page 15 of the report, under the Honorable Nominees sector, critical issues requiring attention within 100 days. The report indicates that the free water for October to December 2020 has not been paid for. It remains outstanding. Is the nominee able to indicate to this committee how many beneficiaries there were for the free water program, how much it cost the taxpayer, and whether she thinks that payment can be made within the 100 days, as this report is urging? We've done 54 days already.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Honorable, for the kind words. Yes, the 100 days, I think, starts, Honorable Chair, from the day the minister is sworn into office. As I'm a caretaker minister, if I even chase the Honorable Minister for caretaker Minister for Finance, he won't be able to help much. So I'm hoping that as soon as you are kind enough to approve the nominees and we start work, this will be sorted out, if it hasn't been done already. And the amount of money that we spent on the good people of Ghana to make sure there's no outbreak of cholera and dysentery, etc., etc., during this COVID period was 840 million Ghana cedis. For urban water, we have 10 million people that benefited. The figure for the rural water, I'm yet to get it, the final figure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I believe the Honorable Nominee will finish us with the rural water one later. My second question, Honorable Nominee, is to kindly take you back to the matter of making Accra the cleanest city. You did indicate earlier that we are on course, but respectfully, I want to draw your attention to His Excellency the President's specific promise that it was time-bound. He said by his first term, by the end of his first term. So when you tell us today, after the first term, that we are on course, there's something respectfully wrong with that. I hold in my hands the President's State of the Nation address, the message on the State of the Nation, delivered to Parliament on the 21st of February 2019. At page 14 of the statement, third paragraph, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I quote, "Last year, I reiterated before you my pledge of improving sanitation in the country and making Accra the cleanest city in Africa by the end of my first term," unquote. So, Mr. Chairman, the nominee will have to tell us the status of this promise, particularly when, very briefly, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I sent my research team around town this morning, and you can see this is Dummy Market at 9:26 a.m. An eyesore indeed, very, very ugly state of sanitation. I also have here, this is Dummy Railway at 9:10 a.m. today. I also have here Accra Tudu Lane at 2 minutes past 10. An eyesore indeed. Very terrible situation about our sanitation. This is 9:40 a.m. Kwame Nkrumah Circle. Very busy transportation hub. This is 9:50 a.m. Kwame Nkrumah Circle. Very heart-wrenching, very terrible. With this specific time-bound promise.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, indeed. The President didn't only say that he will make Accra the cleanest, he would want to make Accra the cleanest city. He said the whole country needs to be clean. And I think the President must be commended for this bold declaration. It was up to us, the stakeholders and the key players, to do our work. As the Honourable Minister has exhibited, we also do monitoring around. I will not doubt all these pictures. As I speak, our monitors are in the field. And when they come back, we deal with the specific the metropolitan or in Accra, in the big cities, we deal with them. They do have a challenge with solid waste. That is why we need this huge pillar of Sanitation Authority to help strategize and direct affairs, especially in the business, central business districts, the CBDs. They do have a huge problem. And then one area that we have identified is that they don't even work on Sundays. Those who hold the franchise, we are still negotiating with them. I must pay tribute to the contractors who, through their association, have gotten some of these contracts to up their game, and we mean to also emphasize our monitoring units to make sure they move around, and before sunrise, all these things shouldn't be on our books, I should say. They will give excuses for logistics. We've taken notes of their challenges, and I'm sure that very soon we will find long-lasting, sustainable solutions to them. On the President's declaration, I think, like I said, I want to reiterate and emphasize that it's a very bold declaration, and we need all of us the motto is keep Ghana clean, and the answer is play your part. You know, these are the areas that we need to emphasize and send logistics to, and we are not oblivious of that. Thank you, Honorable, for your observations, and we'll tackle that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, my final question is on the matter of compost plants. I see from the Presidential Task Force report at page 14 that you state, and I quote, construction of integrated recycling and compost plants in all regional capitals. You do not provide details, no timelines. Can you kindly expatiate on this project? What is the model? Is it a PPP? How much will it cost? And what are the timelines, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, indeed. The President was gracious enough to cut the sword for all the compost plants, and it's a PPP. The private sector, led by the ESPA chairman, the JOSCON group of companies, they have come with us to do these projects. And I must say that the ministry did some research and shared it with them, and they took the results running. And I must doff my hat off to them, because they have really put their money where their mouth is. And government, like the President said at the sword cutting ceremonies, every company or individual who is prepared to come in to do this business, government will support. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The cost varies, but averagely it's about $15 million. Yes.
I'm grateful, Mr. Chairman.
Well, Gisela first.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Gisela, is that, did I pronounce
Oh, okay.
it? Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lift Pierre.
Speak true, right, wrong, follow the king.
It's a coded. Honorable nominee, you mentioned that the water interventions in my constituency under community water, actually they are not working well. I can give you a whole list of communities, so maybe you can ask community water to go back and check the reasons why it's not working as well as it should be.
Sure, old girl, I'll do that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'd like to know what the policy on marine, let me call it marine sanitation, sanitation at the beaches. We have a 550-kilometer shoreline with quite a number of communities, obviously, earning their living off the beaches. But over time, when the fisher folk go to sea and they pull their nets, there's a lot of plastics. What has been the policy over the past 4 years, and what gaps were there, and what do you intend to change or amend going forward? Because I believe that for those of us who wish to promote tourism in our constituencies, the beaches are a very key part of that agenda. So we'd like to know what the policy has been and what it is now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe I have spent sleepless nights on some of these challenges. And we know, I always say, that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Where people have succeeded, we have done some research to share with the ministry that has the plastic policy in its bosom. The task force that we also set up includes the Ministry of Tourism, and we have encouraged them to also engage with hoteliers. And Labadi, I must mention, because it's commendable, they have taken charge of their section on their shoreline. And I believe that's the way to go is to make sure the plastic policy is operationalized to take care of the plastics before they get into our drains to be washed by rainwater into the sea. Also, the compost plants that we can set up to recycle plastics should also be stretched to include a number of businesses that can go into that. I believe the honorable MPs who are also interested in setting up recycling of plastics in their constituencies should also take that up, and the business community. So I believe these are my thoughts on that. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
A follow-up question to this. Is there no possible way that perhaps employment opportunities can be gained by your policy adjustments? Because the beaches are in the communities and they are needed for the necessary agendas and they must be kept clean. Is there no opportunity for employment and possible, something creative that will be able to sustain the whole activity of cleanliness at the beaches?
Yes, that is a good way to look at it. Like I said, it creates jobs. The recycling compost plants that we have set up around the country will get fertilizer to be sold. The plastics can be turned into chairs and bowls, etc., etc. That's why I made a statement earlier on that waste is wealth, depending on how you look at it. So it's a good point to note. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ajari? Yes. Techima North. Is that right?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Congratulations, Honorable Nominee. I take you back to rural Ghana, where I come from, and still on open defecation. You indicated that you'd be happy to have about 1 million household toilets. Can you tell us how you're going to finance this? Because this is a real need for the rural community. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think when it comes to the provision of some of these essential structures, we can follow up on other people who have succeeded to do this. There's always the component of GOG and the component of funding by donor partners. I see these also as a public good because we need to give dignity to ourselves. I know of MPs who have built places of convenience. I built one in my earlier life as an MP, and I believe this Gamma project that we did, MP for Blakema West, and then other MPs also allow their constituents to benefit from the system. So this is my take also on that. It's a major project, and the earlier we did that, the better for all of us. So I agree with you. We'll give you the this thing on it, the talk on it, so that we can relate and then see what can be done, especially in the constituency. Thank you, Mr. One last. My next and last will be about refuse dumps. Refuse dumps. Yes. It looks like we are living with refuse dumps in our community without any attempt at collecting them or without any attempt at making sure that we even have these big refuse, the metal bowls for the collection, so they are dumped everywhere in our community and we are living with it and getting sick. What will be your policy, especially in the rural communities, to ensure that we don't live with these? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe my honorable member is talking about the skips that are put at strategic places to collect that's the way to go. Apart from that, optionally you can have the cells that we've already sent a circular around all over Ghana to make sure that MMDAs practice that. 8 meters by 4 meters to put in the organic waste to form a compost plants traditionally for the communities. So the skips, we are trying to also bring in the private sector to make sure the private sector to make sure we have enough to to go around. I think the arrangements are quite advanced, and we'll keep you posted as we go on. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Boku Central.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I have only one opportunity to ask the questions. Sanitation, waste management, toilets. Why don't you just, as a ministry, try and enforce the building regulations that require that there should be a toilet in every building? You can't hear me?
No.
I'm saying, why don't you just try to enforce the law that in the building regulations that requires that every house should have a toilet built into it? Why don't you just do this simple act?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I got the honorable member right, that's why can't we enforce this regulation that every house should have a toilet? I think it's the MMDAs who are supposed to not only enforce that, but to make sure that no permit is given to any building that doesn't have. So it's for us all to make sure we insist on that, especially once it's the law. So I agree with you 110%. We need to enforce that. And that is why we need this pillar to also help and give support to the MMDAs to enforce some of these laws, because it's automatic. At times they will go with the design land, or it has some amount of water. We should also be interested. Thank you.
Okay. So in an earlier answer to a question,
I believe the problem is so huge that it needs a multifaceted approach. Hence the CLT approach, as well as the UNICEF, USAID, and all these NGOs and the special initiatives. What I did was to collate all that they did. So if you look at our figure, it's 125,000. But if you add everything, it goes to about 147,000. So I believe we need every hand in solving the open defecation problem. When it is slow in an area, another fast area shows it up. So that is that. And then the headline news, I think it was settled. Multimedia came in and we settled that. Thank you.
Well, it's not, my question, I don't know if you didn't get it. I'm talking about the conflict between the approach that the CLTS is adopting to deal with open defecation, which is supported by all these NGOs, as against government's push to construct public toilets, which the CLTS was supposed to replace.
No, Honorable Chairman, but like I said, I will go for everything that will go to let Ghana be off this radar of open defecation. Thank you, Mr.
Aja.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Honorable nominee, my question is on open drains. Look, I believe we are in the 21st century in this country, and we're still constructing open drains in this country. Would you say that there's a direct correlation between that and our poor sanitation situation? And what will be your plans? Should you be confirmed to work with the Minister of Roads to ensure that at least the drains that are being constructed are covered in order to reduce the sanitation problems that they currently pose? Because most open drains now have been turned into refuse dumps. They've become mosquito breeding grounds, and it has a direct effect on our environment. So the mantra is we are as healthy as our environment. But if the environment is so sick, how do we stay well? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The question of, I think I'll add open gutters. I am more concerned about the open gutters than the open drains, because the drains are for storm rain water. We cannot do away with the open drains. Otherwise, we'll be flooded in no time when it rains. I think the open gutters, they are archaic, they are passé, and we need to have the new design of road engineering. And one typical example is the one we have at the Abubloshi market. It's a modern design, and you see that the water passes through some vents. You don't have the open gutters for people to either pour in rubbish or litter. And I found out one thing also during the course of my tour of all the
Honorable Chief Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chairman, sorry, I was in an earlier meeting with the Speaker, so if I ask any question that has been asked already, I hope the nominee will forgive me. Mr. Speaker, I just want to find out from Mr. Chairman. I just want to find out from the nominee. She's been in this ministry for 4 years, and now she's been nominated again. Oh, about 3 years. Oh, okay. Oh, 2 years. Yeah, because she was at aviation before. Yeah, sorry. And now she's been nominated to stay in that ministry. Are there some major challenges that you can tell us that confront that ministry, and how you hope into the next few years you may be able to overcome them?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe the major problem, I should say, is funding. If we have funding today, we'll cover the 1 million. And I know the funds compete with other sectors. So that is an area that we need massive support for. And I must say that His Excellency the President has placed sanitation and water on his priority list. So we will overcome that, I hope, when funds are available. The next major headache is, in quotes, the stubborn nature of some of us. Meaning, if even you provide a litter bin, with regard to the littering, they will still throw things around and turn around to complain. That is also a headache. And we tried to solve that through the means of engaging people to do attitudinal change exercises, and the costs. One bill that they proposed was about 10 million cedis. And I said, 10 million can build so many toilets, so I'd rather go to the ground, solve the problems, etc. So that is also one. It's just like the wearing of masks that people are refusing to wear. You cannot beat them up, but the law will catch up with them. So the littering is also one issue, and that has to do with the solid waste. Then we come to the issue of this open defecation, which we have talked a lot about here. And as for the other, I think we can overcome, because we are working perfectly with the private sector to make sure they also show up the statistics that we need positively in this area. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I mean, yes, she mentioned the challenges, but I haven't heard her clearly how she intends to deal with them. Because our financing, it's always been with every ministry. But the nature of her sector, what innovative things can she put in place to improve the financing? Because you will know that once we rely on GOG, I mean, there can never be enough. So if you continue to rely on GOG, then after probably 4 years of your presence there, not much will change.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is true, indeed. That is why we have a system called the polluter pays for instance, in the area of solid waste, we all pay when the bins are lifted in our homes, from our homes, but there are vulnerable areas that I believe we should all see it as a public good, and we are going to incorporate that into the authority when we bring it up for discussion, so that the vulnerable areas can be also catered for, because public health is essential. We also have, in the other areas of challenge, like I talked to my colleague, former colleague, the health minister, and we talked about those of our compatriots who are living on the streets, for instance, and some have mental problems, and he tells me the figure he has is about 20,000. They are roaming around, they live on the street, it's a social problem. We have people who live permanently also on the streets. There are people who sell on the streets, etc., etc. And we have various measures and proposals that we have made to take to the MMDAs. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, in an answer to an earlier question about the Clean Accra City project, you said the budget provided 200 million, and you said you got only 43 million, right?
I think
I'm saying that the Accra Clean project, the budget provided 200 million, and you said you got only 43 million.
What I said, if I got the honourable member right, was that our component is 43 million, 43.2 or so, if I'm right.
So is that not what you got? But the actual project was about 200 million.
We had four ministries listed: Zongo Ministry, local government, works and housing, and sanitation, water resources. And it was being led by the works and housing ministry. So our component is different from the other.
So your component that was in it was 43 million, or that's what the release was? I wanted to be sure the budgeted figure and the actual figure that you got.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, our component was even 42.2 million.
And how much of it was released? How
nothing,
much of it?
Nothing yet.
Oh, nothing was.
We are talking about the same thing. Is this the Garrett project? The World Bank project? Nothing yet. We are now at the initial stages of feasibility, etc.
Because the answer earlier that I heard was about, the project was used to clean the Odo River and those things. Oh, it hasn't started yet.
This is it, no.
So even when it was said that within 1 year you were going to clean Accra City, yeah, you said that within the first term, Accra was going to be the cleanest city. 4 years has gone and that project hasn't even started.
Mr. Chairman, I believe we are talking at cross purposes. This project was to augment what we've done so far.
Okay, so then
on the Odo Basin, yes.
Can I just find out, averagely, since you went to the ministry the past 2 years, about how much do you think has been spent in making effort to get Accra clean?
Mr. Chairman, I can't give the figure on top of my head. I can get it for you. Thank you.
But I think a substantial amount has gone in there. I'm saying that you think a substantial amount has gone into the project of cleaning Accra.
Like I always say, it's not only my ministry taking care of it. There are stakeholders. So we all come together and do the work. Thank you, Mr.
Mr. Chairman, prior to the election, there were a lot of short-cutting about these recycle plants. across the country. A number of them, they were salt cutting. Were they going to be PPP or it was going to be funded by government?
PPP, Mr. Chairman.
And were we to contribute anything, or it was just for private persons to build and operate and probably hand over to us?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
So we were providing the sites, or what were we going to do?
The regional coordinating councils were going to work with on behalf of government with the private sector.
So how are we going to be paying for the services that they will be providing?
Build, operate, and transfer.
No, I know. I mean,
Yes.
once they build it.
You dump and pay.
But will government be also making payments monthly to them or annually to them once we are doing
the agreement will turn out all these issues.
Okay, so you don't have the agreement yet?
Structures are not in place yet.
My worry is if you cut short to do the plant and you've not yet gotten the agreement, are we not likely to run into crisis? Because when the people are finished building, that's when you want to now have the agreement.
I think negotiations are ongoing and will play the pivotal role in that.
Currently, how many compost plants or compost and recycle plants do we have across the country?
I have 17 I know of.
So currently, the 17 that are in place, how are we running them?
There's an old one that was conceived, reading my notes, in 1950. The compost plant is off now. Then we have the Accra compost plant, which we came to meet, and it's working at
I'm only asking how they are running. Are all of them run by private persons, or some are still being run by the local authorities?
They are working with the private sector, local assemblies, like the landfill site, for instance. It's not a compost plant, but the landfill site is being operated by the assembly and the private sector.
So do we make payments to where we are using private persons to partly run it? Do we make payments to them?
Of course. Like the Tamale landfill. The management fee is paid. They have an agreement.
Or with the local government authority or?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Do you have an idea how much we are paying per monthly?
Each assembly and its figure.
Okay, but you don't know how much we are paying
not
globally?
As I sit here, Mr. Chairman.
And then we were just talking about the desalination project. Are you aware that in the PURC build-up tariff, that is factored in? Mr.
Chairman, again, I didn't get that. That is factored in. That is, Mr. Chairman, I want to.
Oh, I'm saying that, the PURC, in determining tariffs, they consider a lot of things and they add them to arrive at how much we have to pay or how much the companies will have to charge. And I'm saying that in the case of the Desalination project, PURC have factored their operation into their build-up cost to determine how much Ghana Water should be charging. And I'm saying whether you are aware of this.
Yes, I am.
So if the Desalination project is shut down, do we still have to be making payment to them?
If it's shut down, Mr. Chairman, I don't think there is any intention to shut it down.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I will just leave it here. Thank you very much.
Well, Honorable
Mr. Chairman, I should congratulate the nominee, Minister responsible for water and sanitation, and to find out from her whether she appreciates Ghana's standing by the latest UN assessment on our commitment to attaining SDG Goal 6. And she is presiding over a portfolio which are all critical to Ghana's review on water and sanitation. What assurances do you have that we are on course, quoting your own words, striving to attain the goals on access to water and access to sanitation? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe with the support of all of us and with government's prioritization of the sector, Ghana is likely to achieve the SDG 6 by the year 2030.
And in the next 4 years, what is your anticipation? Where will we be in the pursuit of those key objectives?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With the water, if I may take the water sector, for instance, if within 4 years we've been able to attract funding of about 1.7 billion, when we finish with all the phases of the water projects to benefit 5.5 million, I think we are home and dry on that. And with the long-term measures and the medium-term measures that we are putting in place for sanitation, I hope and pray that we will achieve our SDG 6. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, I want to find out from the minister nominee, students in our schools of hygiene, and you recall those early days of our development, the Sama group, they are very popular, referred to as the Sama. When were they last posted by your ministry collaborating with the Ministry for Local Government? And do you have any plans for students in the School of Hygiene and any plans to adjust their earnings or allowances? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may start from the last point, their allowances were in a limbo because they were moved from the Ministry of Health to the Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources, and the Finance Minister, through our promptings, paid their allowances, so that is settled. And the Saman, like we used to call them, they are now replaced by the sanitation guards, and each municipality is supposed to have, they have launched a few of them, and they are the ones who work with the environmental health officers to make sure environment is clean. Again, for the past 10 years, Mr. Chairman, there was no recruitment of the students that were churned out of the school. And last year, we were fortunate enough to have the financial clearance to employ 1,174 students. And all the 3 schools of hygiene are also being
174, those who've been trained or students, those who've passed
1,174.
1,174.
Yes.
Those who have graduated or those who are still in school?
Those who have graduated, Mr. Chairman.
You.
They are now working, they've been posted out, and I'm happy they've gained access to jobs. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, I have here the handing over notes for the Ministry of Water and Sanitation. You recall the President's declaration to fight illegal small-scale mining, popularly referred to as galamsey. And I have this quote for you. The mining activities within the catchment of River Brim, Dapaah, and the White Volta are still ongoing, leading to severe raw water quality deterioration. What will you do in collaboration with your colleagues to protect these water bodies and provide for quality water in Ghana?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have the Water Resources Commission that is in charge of monitoring our water bodies. And since the President's declaration of war on illegal mining, we have a monitoring unit that goes round and submits quarterly reports. I must say that the water quality as of July 2020 was quite good with their turbidity levels. And Mr. Chairman, with your kind permission, if I may cite one or two of them for our consumption. Brim River, Sin in Achimda and Osino, for instance, the turbidity used to be 1,590, but it's now 268. And Ankobra, which used to be 4,432, is now 503. And we have the Tano, the Bia, the Pra, and these are the figures we have as at July 2020. We'll be getting the figures for 2020 December and the...
Chairman, I think that the nominee doesn't have the data for River Pra. Is that the case?
I have. But I just asked the Pra. You are interested in the Pra?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, the Pra River as seen as Ghana Water has an intake at Dapaah. I'll use that as the example. Dapaah was 825 NTU in February 2020, but in July it was 434. And Chifu Praso used to be 1,595. It's now 465. So, Mr. Chairman, in essence, the war that the President declared was successful in a way vis-a-vis our water bodies, and we should continue to support the President to fight this war. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Was it successful in improving water quality or successful in fighting galamsey? What are you communicating?
Both. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And Chairman, weak and aged distribution networks is weak and aged. Your distribution networks are weak and said to be aged, and then inadequate system laboratories across the country. What plans do you have to improve that?
Mr. Chairman, we had, I think it started long ago, to make sure we changed the cast iron pipes into HDP pipes to prevent leakages and intrusion of foreign material in our water that we deliver to our homes. It is true, some of these pipes are 65 years and above and 70 years, etc., etc. And they cost quite a lot. So we are systematically applying IGF to change some of these. And with the labs, I think I will coordinate with the MD to find out what we can do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, I noticed that the nominee shared some turbidity figures in respect of those that I mentioned. But perusing her handing over notes again, National Annual Summary of the Treated and Distributed Water Quality Compliance per Region for Compliance for 2019. Do I note that you don't have the figures for 2020?
Not all the figures, Mr. Chairman, as I said.
And you see that some of the figures for 2019 are at 90%, and you want to achieve, I've seen 98, 99 elsewhere. What plans do you have to improve the standard, particularly, for instance, in the Upper West region?
Mr. Chair, but I think, are we talking about What page, Mr. Chairman, if I may ask?
I'm looking at page 20 of your handing over notes, October 2020, volume 2. This one is more on the compliance, quality compliance. So what general plans do you have to improve quality compliance across the country? But like I stated, I note that you haven't provided for 2020 in this handing over note, so I'm relying on the 2019 data.
Mr. Chairman, one thing I want to put across is that Ghana produces one of the best quality water you can ever find. The pH level, which we give to the quality of water, Ghana has one of the highest. So with the introduction of the HDP pipes, it's almost impossible to tamper with the pipes. And normally the water is treated at a cost from the source. But at first, it used to get contaminated en route. But now it's no more. So I believe when the figures do come in, we'll have good results. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, the Community Water and Sanitation Agency owes, and it owes the Electricity Company of Ghana to the tune of about 5 million. I note that a portion of it was paid. How do you intend to retire those outstanding obligations which is affecting their operations?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The figure is even more. It's not 5 million, but 35 million at the last count. 35? Yes, Mr. Chairman.
What accounts for that?
It is because of the usage of electricity. Mr. Chairman, the system is such that we have a committee that looks after the rural water systems within the MMDAs. And some of them, although we've set up a mechanism of putting 1/3 of the IGF in an account to support maintenance and the payment of these bills, some of them refuse to do that. And that gives us the accumulated figure of 35 million. So we have new reforms, Mr. Chairman, that we have introduced, and it's received cabinet approval, whereby the defunct or non-functioning systems are taken over by the Community Water and Sanitation Agency to make sure we maintain, operate, and give the good people of Ghana the water they need. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, just related to that, a number of public institutions also owe water bills. That is also piling up debt in the name of the state or the republic. What will you do to put an end to that practice?
Mr. Chairman, just like the electricity meters, we hope in the long term to introduce meters into the system to make sure you pay as you use or you pay and use. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So are we expecting that should you become minister, the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Water Resources, Ministry of Sanitation will be meted to pay for water as is required of them, because in their projections, even for budget, they make provision for it, yet they hold this money in denial, and the entities to whom they should make this payment are never paid. Are you assuring us that you meter public institutions to pay for water supplied to them?
Mr. Chairman, we are thinking through that. Thank you.
Thinking through is not sufficient. What's the policy drive? What will policy do? Because it's been on, not just you, over a decade. They just don't pay. And because they don't pay, it becomes difficult for those institutions to run efficiently. Chairman, the other one is...
That is true.
The nominee have dealt with the matter of Tamale water, but I'll still come back to it. Yesterday, I was around the Tamale airport area, driving through the Honorable Suhini's constituency, and both left and right. When I got to Zaire, just by the Kamina barracks, I saw women struggling in those yellow gallons in search for water. That is the situation through Full, through Berepela, through Nalung, through Kapaile, and in particular Chanshegu, just opposite the UDS. You can imagine if a university doesn't have adequate supply of water. We will accelerate work to ensure that there is improved water provision in Tamale and its environs.
Mr. Chairman, that's a foregone conclusion, but in particular reference, with particular reference to Honorable's constituency. I read it in the papers, and I even have the press cutting in my file. I've talked to the MD to make sure tanker services are sent around to provide water, because we all know is the onus will be on the women and the girl child to go looking for water. I think we should leave them to go to school and do their chores. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, may I find out from the nominee what is Ghana's standing? We didn't achieve the Millennium Development Goal on sanitation. We transited into the Sustainable Development Goal on sanitation. What is our rating by the UN on sanitation?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have the figure. I'll find out. But like I said, we will work assiduously to make sure we achieve it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. We promised ourselves that in exactly 2 hours we will bring proceedings to a halt and close. We're just about finishing, 5 minutes, but I'll ask you a question. You have talked about the required water and Yankwanta Dominasi. What is the state of those two projects?
Thank you, Honorable Chairman. The project that will be applying in those areas is the Accra Africa project that will work or provide water for 588 communities, and yours is surely in it. I cut a sword in Accra, and we mean to start with the Ashanti region next. Then we go to the Volta, OT, and then Eastern region. There are 5 regions benefiting from this project. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very well. Now, specifically, I live in Accra, in Ghana. If I'm lucky, water passes through my taps once a week. If I'm lucky.
So where do you go with that?
I buy. At the point, I was there last weekend. I opened my tap, and the water coming through the tap is like mud. Very dirty. That's the community water under management of community water and sanitation. What accounts for these, and how do we make sure we improve the quality and the access? We are talking about access, but at Ajengano, if you are lucky, you get it once a week.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With regard to the Ajengano situation, I must say that water at times is rationed in Accra, for instance, like it's happening in Kumasi, because population has outstripped supply. That is why we are working on the Pond 2 to make sure we get enough water for Accra. At the same time, we are also working on the Wager plant to expand and do a new system to add to the supply. With regard to the Bekwai issue, occasionally we have such complaints, and when we send the engineers, what they notice is that if the supply is at the end of the station, you have these muddy water passing through, but that should never happen. So I'll take it up, get the details, and we'll cross-check. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you for attending upon the House. You are discharged. You will hear from us later.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Honorable colleagues, we will resume in 5 minutes.
Please don't sit, walk around a little. That's the instructions of Mr. Speaker.
poultry droppings, even